The proposition Nora Williams stared at the imposing steel and glass building that housed Reed Technologies, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The receptionist had escorted her to the top floor, her pitying glance making Nora's cheeks burn. Everyone knew about the Williams family scandal, how her stepfather had embezzled millions before disappearing, leaving Nora, her mother, and teenage sister drowning in lawsuits and debt collectors' threats. "Mr. Reed will see you now," the assistant announced, gesturing toward double mahogany doors. Harrison Reed stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette sharp against Seattle's cloudy skyline. At 35, he'd built an empire from a college dorm room startup, and his reputation for being brilliant and merciless preceded him. When he turned, Nora noticed his eyes first, gray like winter mornings, calculating and cool. "Miss Williams," he said, voice smooth as polished stone. "Please sit." Nora straightened her second-hand blazer. "Mr. Reed, if this is about the property foreclosure, I'm exploring every possible—" "I have a proposition," he interrupted, sliding a leather folder across his desk. "One that would benefit us both considerably." Inside was a contract with terms so outrageous that Nora nearly laughed. "Marriage? You can't be serious." Harrison's expression remained unchanged. "Entirely serious. My company is launching a family-friendly software platform next quarter. The board and investors prefer stability. My recent broken engagement to Vanessa Porter has created unhelpful speculation about my personal life." Nora knew about the Porter scandal. Harrison's ex-fiancée had left him for his former business partner, creating weeks of tabloid fodder. "So you want a fake wife to boost your image?" she asked incredulously. "I want a contractual arrangement for exactly 12 months. You present as my wife at required events. We maintain appearances. In exchange, I clear your family's debts and provide housing and expenses." Nora's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages. The clause outlining financial terms made her dizzy, enough to pay off every cent her stepfather had stolen, plus her mother's medical bills. "Why me?" she whispered. Something flickered across his face, something almost human. "You have an impeccable reputation despite your family situation. You've worked 3 jobs while finishing your degree. You're suitable." The words stung, but Nora had weathered worse insults. "There are rules," Harrison continued. "No emotional entanglements. Separate bedrooms. We present as a united couple in public only. Your personal life remains private as long as discretion is maintained." Nora thought about her mother's face that morning. Aged a decade in the past year, and her sister Emma's college acceptance letter they couldn't afford to celebrate. "If I refuse," Harrison shrugged, "then I wish you luck with the creditors. I understand they're quite persistent." The pen felt heavy in Nora's hand as she stared at the signature line. "Do you always get what you want, Mr. Reed?" For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Almost always, Miss Williams." Outside the window, rain began to fall, streaking down the glass like tears. Nora signed her name in one fluid motion, feeling as though she were signing away more than just her legal status. "The marriage ceremony will be private tomorrow afternoon," Harrison said, taking the contract. "My assistant will provide everything you need." As Nora stood to leave, Harrison added, "One last thing. We maintain this arrangement between us alone. The world believes we've been privately dating. A whirlwind romance. Can you act, Miss Williams?" Nora met his gaze steadily. "For my family, Mr. Reed, I can do anything." What she couldn't know then was that Harrison Reed had his own secrets, motives beyond public relations and company image. Motives that had led him directly to her door with a contract that would change everything. Walls of glass 3 weeks into their arrangement, Nora found herself standing in Harrison's penthouse, their penthouse, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back wore a designer dress she would never have afforded in her previous life, hair styled by professionals, makeup subtle but flawless. The transformation was striking, but the uncertainty in her eyes remained unchanged. "Your first charity gala as Mrs. Reed," she whispered to herself. "Just smile and nod. Remember your backstory." Their fabricated romance had been meticulously crafted by Harrison's PR team. They'd supposedly met at a literary fundraiser, plausible given Nora's literature degree, bonded over rare first editions, and fallen in love away from the public eye. The story played well in the press, the reclusive tech genius and the intelligent bookworm from a troubled family. Redemption and romance in one neat package. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Harrison stood in the doorway, immaculate in his tuxedo, expression unreadable as always. "The car arrives in 10 minutes, he said, his eyes briefly scanning her appearance. The emeralds were the right choice. The necklace he'd sent that morning, for appearances, the note had stated, felt heavy against her collarbone. "Thank you," Nora replied, maintaining the professional courtesy that defined their interactions. "I've memorized the guest list and reviewed the talking points." Harrison nodded. "Remember, Senator Blackwood will ask about your family. Deflect gracefully." "I've had practice," she said with unexpected bitterness. Something flickered across Harrison's face, perhaps surprise at her candor, before his mask returned. In 3 weeks, they had perfected an elaborate dance of avoidance. Harrison left early for work, returned late, and spent evenings in his private study. Nora had transformed the guest wing into her sanctuary, volunteered at a literacy program downtown, and called her mother and sister daily, relishing their relief and renewed hope. Their lives touched only in carefully orchestrated moments, like planets maintaining safe orbits around each other. At the gala, Nora performed flawlessly. She laughed at the right jokes, asked intelligent questions about charitable initiatives, and touched Harrison's arm occasionally with practiced affection. To everyone watching, they appeared deeply in love. "You're quite convincing," Harrison murmured as they circled the dance floor, his hand properly positioned at her waist, maintaining the exact appropriate distance. "So are you," she responded, noticing how his expression softened when she approached, how his smile seemed to reach his eyes when introducing her. "You're either an excellent actor or missed your calling on Broadway," the corner of his mouth twitched. "Perhaps I simply appreciate having someone competent beside me." It wasn't a compliment exactly, but from Harrison it felt like one. Later that night, as their driver navigated the rain-slicked streets of Seattle, Nora caught Harrison watching her reflection in the window. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "Senator Blackwood's wife mentioned you discussed restoration of first edition Austen novels. You know something about that?" Nora nodded. "I interned at the university's rare book collection during college. Before everything happened. You never mentioned that." "You never asked," she replied simply. The following morning, Nora found a first edition of Persuasion on the kitchen counter. No note, no explanation. Just the book she'd once mentioned was her favorite during a public interview they'd rehearsed. That evening, she left a cup of tea outside his study, prepared exactly how she'd observed he liked it during their public breakfasts. Neither acknowledged these small breaches in their careful indifference. Days turned into weeks. Small, insignificant exchanges accumulated like dust motes in sunlight, visible only when caught at the right angle. Harrison began arriving home earlier. Nora sometimes worked on her laptop in the living room instead of her private quarters. Once, they found themselves watching the same documentary on separate ends of the sofa, maintaining silence but sharing occasional glances during compelling moments. The walls remained between them, transparent but solid, allowing them to see each other without truly connecting. Nora told herself it was better this way. Safer. The contract in the safe was their reality, not the lingering glances or the increasing comfort in shared spaces. What she didn't realize was that Harrison had begun canceling meetings to attend her literacy program events. Watching from the back row as she animated children with stories, her face transformed by genuine passion. He never mentioned these visits, just as she never mentioned noticing his car outside the community center, waiting until she'd safely entered before driving away. Their elaborate performance continued, perfect in public, cautious in private, until the night everything shattered. The unplanned touch, the invitation to Harrison's ex-fiancée's gallery opening, arrived on embossed cardstock, Vanessa Porter's elegant signature a deliberate provocation. Attending would be expected. Anything less would fuel rumors of lingering resentment. So they went, armor polished and masks firmly in place. The gallery buzzed with Seattle's elite, conversations flowing as freely as champagne. Nora felt Vanessa's eyes tracking them from across the room, tall, willowy, with calculated warmth that never reached her eyes. "Harrison," Vanessa greeted when they could no longer avoid her, air kissing his cheek. "And the new Mrs. Reed, how domestic you two seem." "Your exhibition is remarkable," Harrison replied neutrally. "Congratulations," Vanessa's smile sharpened. "Marriage suits you. Though I wonder," her gaze slid to Nora, "if your bookish bride knows what she's signed up for." Nora recognized the challenge. "Actually, Harrison's been surprisingly open with me, unlike some of his previous relationships." The barb landed. Vanessa's smile faltered before she recovered. "Well, enjoy the evening. Oh, and Harrison? Thomas was asking about you. He's by the sculpture garden." Thomas Chen, Harrison's former business partner and Vanessa's current lover. The ambush was expertly arranged. "We should circulate," Nora suggested, feeling Harrison's tension beside her. "No." His voice was quiet but firm. "Some confrontations are inevitable." Thomas approached minutes later, champagne in hand, triumph barely concealed. "Harrison, and this must be Nora. Vanessa mentioned how quickly you two connected." The implication hung in the air, that Nora was a rebound, a convenient distraction. "Life reveals the right paths when you least expect them," Harrison replied, his arm sliding around Nora's waist. The conversation that followed was excruciating. Veiled references to business decisions, subtle digs about loyalty and judgment. Nora watched Harrison's composure crack slightly, a muscle tightening in his jaw. "You know," Thomas said, lowering his voice, "everyone wondered how you'd recover after our little reorganization. Taking on a charity case wasn't on anyone's bingo card." The insult was clear. Before Harrison could respond, Nora stepped forward. "Interesting perspective from someone whose greatest achievement was riding on Harrison's coattails," she said sweetly. "Tell me, how's that independent venture capital fund performing? I heard your last 3 investments folded." Thomas's expression darkened. "You should muzzle your wife, Harrison. Why would I?" Harrison replied, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. "She's absolutely right." They departed shortly after, the silence between them charged rather than empty. In the car, rain pounded against the windows, matching the thundering in Nora's chest. "You didn't have to defend me," Harrison finally said. "He was cruel and wrong," Nora replied. "Contract or not, I won't stand by while someone speaks to you that way." Harrison turned to her, something unfamiliar in his expression. "Why?" The question hung between them, simple but devastating in its implications. Why care? Why break their careful neutrality? Why risk the fragile balance they'd established? "Because," Nora began, then stopped, unable to articulate something she didn't fully understand herself. The car jolted suddenly, skidding on wet pavement. Harrison instinctively reached for her, his body shielding hers as they swerved. The driver regained control quickly, apologizing profusely, but Harrison didn't immediately move away. For precious seconds, they remained close enough for Nora to feel his heartbeat, to see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, to notice his gaze drop to her lips. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice rougher than she'd ever heard it. "Yes," she whispered, though nothing felt okay anymore. He pulled away slowly, reluctantly, and the moment should have ended there. But as they entered the penthouse elevator, Harrison turned to her. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for tonight." Perhaps it was the sincerity in his voice, or the vulnerability in his usually guarded expression. Whatever the reason, Nora found herself reaching up, touching his face with gentle fingers. Harrison went still, his breath catching. When their lips met, it wasn't part of any script or performance. It was unplanned, uncontracted, and utterly transformative. His hands cradled her face as if she were precious, breakable. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness dissolving into connection so intense it frightened them both. When they separated, Harrison looked shaken. Without a word, he stepped back, confusion and desire warring in his expression. The elevator doors opened. The contract lay between them, invisible but undeniable. "I shouldn't have done that," Nora whispered. Harrison's response was barely audible. "Neither should I." That night, for the first time, neither of them slept well in their separate rooms. Hidden motives, the kiss changed everything and nothing. In public, their performance continued flawlessly. In private, they orbited each other with new awareness, conversations lingering, glances holding longer than necessary. Neither mentioned what had happened. As if speaking of it might conjure consequences neither was prepared to face. 6 months into their contract marriage, Nora received a call from her sister Emma that sent her world tilting on its axis. "Someone paid my entire tuition," Emma said, voice vibrating with excitement. "4 years, fully funded. And Mom's medical bills. They're gone, Nora. All of them. The collection agencies stopped calling." That's not possible," Nora stammered, knowing the contract specified gradual payment of debts over the year, not immediate clearance. The hospital said an anonymous donor covered everything, even the experimental treatment Dr. Patterson recommended. That evening, Nora confronted Harrison in his study, the space she'd previously never entered without invitation. "You paid everything," she said without preamble. "Why?" Harrison looked up from his computer, expression carefully neutral. "The arrangement benefits from your family's stability." "Don't," Nora said firmly. "Don't make this about business. The contract specified monthly payments. You cleared everything, including treatments the insurance wouldn't cover." Harrison stood, moving to the window in a familiar gesture she now recognized as his way of creating distance when uncomfortable. "Your mother's prognosis improved significantly with the new treatment protocol. How would you know that?" Silence stretched between them until Harrison finally turned. "I have access to excellent medical consultants." "Who you consulted about my mother specifically?" Nora pressed. "Why would you do that unless—" "Unless what, Nora?" Something flickered across his face. Challenge. Perhaps, or hope. The question hung between them, dangerous in its implications. Instead of answering, Nora noticed a file on his desk, her family name visible on the label. Before Harrison could stop her, she opened it. Inside was evidence of an investigation spanning months, long before their arrangement began. Financial records, travel documentation, international transactions. At the center was a photograph of her stepfather in Buenos Aires, dated 3 weeks ago. "You're tracking him," she whispered, shock washing through her. "You've been looking for Simon all this time." Harrison didn't deny it. "He stole from more people than just your family." "But why?" Nora's voice caught as realization dawned. "How long have you been watching us?" "Watching me?" Harrison's silence was damning. "The contract," she continued, pieces falling into horrifying place. "It wasn't about your image at all, was it?" "What was I, bait? Leverage to find him?" "No," Harrison said sharply. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Harrison?" Anger and betrayal fueled her words. "Explain how investigating my family for months before conveniently offering marriage isn't calculating and manipulative." Harrison ran a hand through his hair, composure cracking. "Your stepfather partnered with Thomas on a side venture, one that stole proprietary technology from my company. When everything collapsed, Thomas emerged unscathed while Simon disappeared with millions." "So this is about revenge," Nora said flatly. "Initially," Harrison admitted, "the truth finally emerging. But then I learned more about you. How you worked multiple jobs to support your mother and sister, how you never abandoned them despite Simon's betrayal." "So you what? Felt sorry for me?" "I admired you," Harrison corrected, moving closer. "The contract was real, my company did need stability, but yes, I had other motives. I thought proximity to you might eventually lead to Simon." "And did it?" Nora asked, voice hollow. Harrison nodded. "International authorities arrested him yesterday. The money's being recovered, including your family's portion." Nora absorbed this, emotions churning. "All this time you've been, what? Playing detective while playing husband?" "It started that way," Harrison admitted. "But something changed. The kiss?" Nora asked bitterly. "Long before that." His voice softened. The night you left tea outside my study. The morning I heard you singing when you thought no one was home. Every time you spoke about books with genuine passion. When you defended me to Thomas without any obligation to do so. He stepped closer. Close enough that Nora could retreat or advance with equal ease. I didn't plan to care about you. Nora. That wasn't in the contract. The hurt and betrayal remained. But beneath it, understanding began to form. Harrison Reed, who calculated every risk, who maintained control in all situations, had lost his careful detachment. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. I don't know what's real anymore, she admitted. Harrison reached for her hand, hesitant in a way she'd never seen him. This is real. Whatever happens when the contract ends, that will be real too. Nora withdrew her hand. I need time. That night, she packed a small bag and went to her mother's house, needing distance to sort through revelations that had shaken the foundations of her world and her heart. Beyond signatures, the Williams family home, modest compared to Harrison's penthouse but infinitely warmer, provided the sanctuary Nora needed. For 2 weeks, she avoided Harrison's calls and messages, each more urgent than the last. Her mother, looking healthier than she had in years, watched Nora with knowing eyes. You're in love with him, she said one evening as they sat on the porch swing. Nora didn't deny it. He lied to me. Used me, did he? Her mother asked gently. Or did he find a way to help us all while protecting his own interests? Men like Harrison don't know straightforward paths to kindness. Nora, they navigate complicated routes. He investigated us before ever meeting me, and discovered the truth when no one else believed us, her mother pointed out. That Simon acted alone, that we were victims too. The perspective shifted something in Nora's understanding. When did you get so wise? Her mother smiled. When I stopped being afraid and started seeing clearly, something you might consider. On the 15th day of her self-imposed exile, Harrison arrived unannounced. Standing in the driveway, looking decidedly uncharacteristic, his usual immaculate appearance replaced by casual clothes and evidence of sleepless nights. Your contract husband is here, Emma announced from the window, failing to hide her grin. He looks miserable. Nora met him outside, arms crossed defensively. I said I needed time. You've had 15 days, Harrison replied. The contract expires in 3 weeks. Is that why you're here? To remind me of our end date? Harrison shook his head, frustration evident. I'm here because I can't sleep in that empty penthouse anymore. Because I miss hearing you humming in the kitchen. Because, he faltered, then continued with determined honesty. Because I've never been more terrified of losing someone in my life. The declaration hung between them, stripping away pretense. I've brought something, he continued, retrieving a document from his car. Our contract. I remember what it says, Nora replied stiffly. Do you? Harrison handed it to her. Read the termination clause. Nora reluctantly opened to the final page. The clause stated that upon completion of 12 months, all obligations would cease unless... She stopped, staring at a handwritten amendment she'd never seen before. In Harrison's precise handwriting, dated the day after their kiss. Unless both parties mutually agree to conversion from contractual to genuine marital status, nullifying all former restrictive clauses. You added this, she whispered, after the elevator. I added it the morning after, yes. I had it notarized but never showed you. I wasn't ready to admit what was happening, which was. Harrison stepped closer. That I was falling in love with my wife. The words, spoken plainly without his usual careful precision, cracked something open in Nora's chest. I don't want your guilt or your compensation, she said. Good, because I'm offering neither, Harrison replied. I'm offering a choice. When our contract ends, we can walk away as planned. Or, he hesitated, vulnerability evident. We can tear it up and start something real. No conditions, no performance, no audience. Just us. Just us, Nora repeated softly. I should have been honest from the beginning, Harrison admitted, but I didn't know how to be. Control and calculation were safer than vulnerability. And now I'd rather risk everything than continue pretending. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. The contract brought us together, but it's not what kept me coming home early, or listening outside the door when you read to neighborhood children, or waking up wondering what you were thinking. Nora felt tears threatening. I was so angry when I found out about your investigation. You had every right to be. But then I realized, you didn't just find Simon. You cleared my family's name, restored my mother's health, secured Emma's future. She met his gaze. You did everything I would have done if I'd had your resources. Does that mean? Nora silenced him by reaching into her pocket, retrieving a pen. With deliberate movements, she crossed out the entire termination clause, writing beneath it, "Contract null and void," replaced by "genuine relationship," terms to be determined by mutual ongoing consent and affection. She signed her name, then offered the pen to Harrison. "Your turn, Mr. Reed." His smile, genuine, unguarded, transformed his face as he added his signature beneath hers. "So what happens now?" he asked, sounding oddly young and uncertain. "Now?" Nora said, stepping into his arms. "We figure it out without a script, one day at a time." 6 months later, they renewed their vows in the university library's rare bookroom, surrounded by family and carefully chosen friends. Their new rings bore a simple inscription inside, "Beyond signatures." The contract that had once defined them now sat framed in Harrison's, their home office, amended and annotated with their journey from arrangement to love. A reminder that sometimes the most binding agreements are the ones written not on paper but on two hearts that found each other through the most unexpected circumstances.